An intellectual carrot, the mind boggles.
You see? You see? You're stupid minds. Stupid! Stupid!
Earth has had Santa Claus long enough. We will bring him to Mars.
I've been afraid a lot of times in my life, but I didn't know the real meaning of fear until I had kissed Becky.
One thing will be clear. It's not for man to interfere in the ways of God.
It's alive. Oh, it's alive. It's alive. It's alive.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Earth vs. Soup, episode 112. I'm Aaron Pollier.
And I'm Darlene.
And we found another Hammer film. We have many Hammer films kind of on the docket, and we're kind of going through them in a strange order, but we decided we're going to do another Hammer film.
You decided.
Yeah, because we're going to try to alternate between doing Hammer films, which are generally good, and then whatever else sci-fi that I can find, being that I've discussed this many times before, that horror and science fiction, especially the 1950s and 60s and before, tend to fall into the same category. These tend to be very similar. So this movie is the Hammer horror movie, The Curse of the Mummy's Tomb from 1964.
October 18th.
October 18th, 1964. Okay.
79 minutes and 103
thousand pounds for its budget, which that's not actually that high of a budget for the time. I mean, it is comparatively speaking, but 1964 multiplied by 7 in US dollars, and I don't know, you're probably looking at $1.5 million or so dollars in today's money.
And it runs about the same as us. The effects, the pictures and stuff like that were nice.
You mean the quality, the quality of the film?
The acting, was just not up to par
for Hammer. See, I actually agree. Before we even go into the plot, I think this is one of the weakest Hammer films we've seen. Oh, no, it is the weakest Hammer film we've seen, but it might be amongst the weakest of all of the Hammer films. I don't know. Because I read some reviews online saying that this was, like, just not up to snuff. Just not up to stuff. Now, that being said, it still has a lot going for it. This movie really does. Like, Hammer always bring it. Even when the movie doesn't really work.
There isn't a character in this that I actually liked.
There are not really even any characters.
You know what I meant by that.
Yes, but I mean none of the characters you like, because there's no depth to them.
And there is no likability to them.
Ooh.
If they do have something there, like the Texas American sponsor.
Fred Clark playing Alexander King. I actually kind of liked him. I think there's actually two characters in this movie that are somewhat likable. And one is a complete asshole all the way up until like 5 minutes before his death. And you're like, wait a second. This guy actually has a little bit of depth, but it's too little too late. And that's Alexander King, right? The character of Alexander King, where he's actually being like a nice guy. And you realize that maybe all of his asshattery is just him being pompous.
Another problem we had was we didn't know who was who.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I will say my notes for this film are probably disjointed because I couldn't tell you who the characters' names were without looking at my phone and Internet Movie Database with the characters' names. Because the characters' names aren't used very often, and when they do, it's just in a very quick way.
The character Adam Beauchamp. I was like, where did he get in? Who is this person? And where?
I have no idea where he came in. I have no idea where he came in, honestly. And remember, I watch these and take notes and comment to you while we're watching them, and I know I'm paying attention to the movie. But there's characters that just appear in this that I have no idea when they appeared. Like, wait a second, we have another character, and that is likely due to the fact that this movie just kind of introduces characters after the first scene, after the first couple scenes, like where you're meeting like the Egyptologists, you meet Annette Dubois. After you meet them, characters just kind of come in and out without really having an introduction. Some of them are memorable, some of them aren't. Like, I remember the introduction of like two of the workers at the Egyptology exhibit, just because they were like lazy workers, and it was at least memorable. Do I know their names? No, because it's completely pointless. I even think like in the credits they don't even have names.
Well, in the credits, it comes on with pictures of the artifacts from Egypt.
Yes, and it's actually a very well shot, thought out camera shot. It's a good scene showing all these artifacts, and it's basically walking through this tomb and showing everything that was found. It's sort of a Tutankhamun's tomb type thing. It was an unlooted Egyptian pharaoh's tomb. So yeah, the credits are really well done.
But then it goes to Egypt in the year 1900, which is in a font that just was like, I was like, what the hell is that font?
The font,
it looked like it was drippy blood.
Really? I didn't get that. But there's like a man tied to stakes in the desert at the beginning, and there's like a rider that comes to see him. One stabs the man, and then he chops off his left hand.
It's an Arabian in all black.
A man who's supposed to be Arabic.
Yes.
I am not convinced he is.
Well, he's dressed like an Arabian.
I am not convinced he is. And in fact, I am not sure the man is not Caucasian in blackface. Or in like dark face, let's put it that way. Like it didn't look right. And it could have just been like the makeup that the man had if he was an actual, Arabic man. I couldn't tell.
And this
which is
person
saying something.
Stabs and then cuts off his hand.
Yeah,
and
his left hand.
That's Professor
That is Professor Dubois. Okay, now
which the actor dies 3 weeks before the premiere,
which is sad. It's probably why he didn't have a larger part in the film. Like, I could see this character living past that moment in the film and like becoming one of the first victims later on, but it's likely that he was just a very sick man anyway and couldn't do a lot, and they decided to do that. I don't know, I'm speculating there.
Maybe he just had that part because
So later that night, we go and meet a man and a woman. And here's where my notes start becoming disjointed almost immediately. We don't really hear this woman's name, so I started writing the daughter of the man who was just killed earlier. Oh, her name is Annette Dubois. Her father is brought in on a stretcher. Do we know the man's name that she was with yet? I think it was just John.
It was John Bray. I had to look it up.
Yeah, but I think it was just referred to as John very quickly.
Her first name, you had to look it up because
Miss Dubois.
Everybody called her Miss Dubois.
Exactly. Okay, so...
And they called John Bray, John, not Mr. Bray.
Yeah. So locals... okay, so her father is brought in on a stretcher. He is dead. But it isn't made clear that he's dead. The way they brought him in on a stretcher and the fact that the actor wasn't being still, I thought he was still alive. But Annette Dubois runs out. Her father is dead.
She goes into her room. Her tent. You hear her scream, and there is the knife and his
severed hand.
His severed hand.
Okay, so
in her bed.
It turns out that they have found this amazing tomb that is completely untouched. It is filled with funerary goods. It's filled with stuff for the pharaoh to have in the afterlife.
And they just finished cataloging it.
They will finish cataloging.
Oh, it's a will.
Scene. Yeah, because there is so much stuff here that, again, it's a Hammer film, so props and sets are amazing looking. Now, there is one problem with a set here that I'm not sure I can actually really ding, but I'm going to mention it later. We'll get to it. But the props for this, as they're cataloging it, gorgeous. Gorgeous. Obviously, they're fake. They wouldn't be using real things in this, and I hope they're not. But they look really good on screen. The locals feel that there's a curse, that anyone who opens up this thing will suffer the curse of the pharaoh, blah, blah, blah. Pharaoh, like Ra, I guess is his name,
it's,
right?
Ra
Antef or something like
Atef.
that. Okay, so I wrote down that some sick bastard sent Annette's father's hand a knife to Annette. She freaks out. A week passes, and the expedition has finally packed up the entire tomb. Oh. That is how much... Because they say it's been a week.
Oh, I didn't.
That is how much stuff was in this tomb. It's tons and tons and tons of boxes. There's a man named Giles. That's Sir Giles.
He's one of the. He is one. He is one of the Egyptologists.
And he meets with a man named Alexander King, played by Fred Clark, and King is the benefactor of this expedition. We get a scene right there where King invents the term Turkish delight for candy and is very proud of himself for coming up with the idea.
But you also have the local
workers.
The local government trying to buy it for £70,000 for the the museum in Cairo.
Yes. And this is like the Egyptian government saying, please don't steal our artifacts. I mean, it's 1900. Obviously, this is even pre... No one... The Brits didn't care. Come on. Hey, guys, if you're British and listening to this, we've been to the British Museum in London. We know how many cultural artifacts are there that are not British. It's... Okay, we get it. I mean, the Parthenon is there.
Yes, but that was given to
under shady stuff. But regardless,
during a thing that it probably would have been destroyed.
Regardless, what's weird is that the Egyptian government is saying, "Don't take these. We will pay you to not take these." And King's just like, "You're offering me £70,000? I can make £700,000. You know, I can make 10 times that just running around the country. I can go through the United States and ensure I make, 10 times that. There's no way I'm leaving this stuff behind. This is mine. I funded the expedition. I'm bringing it out of Egypt." Now, in any other movie, you would think there would be some sort of really cool scene here where some of the artifacts are trying to be stolen, or King has tried to be assassinated. Does that actually happen? No. We go to a belly dancing scene where King is like, this is 1900. You have to start thinking modern. And he's talking about like how P.T. Barnum is kind of a hero of his, about how he's such a showman. And that's where you kind of get that what Alexander King as a character is supposed to be. He's a businessman that's all about the theatrics of it. That he wants to make a name of himself
by doing public expedition.
Yeah.
And
just putting all this stuff on display. So the storehouse where the artifacts have been ransacked, but nothing's been stolen for some reason. Okay. Like I said, what would be really cool is if there was a scene about things trying to be stolen by the Egyptian government and there's some sort of conflict there. But the warehouse is ransacked. Nothing is stolen.
But there's a second death.
There is a second death, but it's one of the workers. And they don't even really mention his name. That's how unimportant this worker is. We then go to the boat to London, and we have Annette and John are dressed to the T's. Sir Giles is attacked in his cabin, and Annette is then attacked by a man wielding a knife.
Giles was the one that was against it leaving Egypt.
Yeah, so Sir Giles, here's a British guy that actually was like, it's wrong to take all this stuff. We shouldn't be taking this stuff. That's interesting. Sorry for Darlene constantly clearing her throat. He is against it being left,
And he quit.
Yeah, he quit the expedition, like in protest. So Sir Giles is attacked, Annette is attacked, and Sir Giles is injured but seemingly fine. Like, he's stabbed, but he's okay. He'll get better. Like,
Well, there's that whole ship scene too.
yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Is the ship scene, Darlene? They're on a ship. They're attacked. The guy is like, the assassin is thrown off the side of the ship, and the crew is like, in another film, it would likely be the crew would be like, oh well, this guy was like a murderer, let him drown. But actually, the crew is like, man overboard, and stops the boat to rescue this guy that just tried to murder two of the people on board. I thought that was kind of interesting. But now we go to London, and it's got to be at least another week later.
And this is where I ask you who this person is.
Yeah, we have a new character that's introduced, who's arguably the main character in this movie. He is the lead on the movie. We have not seen him yet. This is where he's introduced.
Well, I guess he was somebody that was on the ship.
I guess so. And his name is Adam Beauchamp. Or Beauchamp. And he is an incredibly wealthy socialite in London. And Annette, for some reason, is visiting him. And he has a whole display of Fabergé jewelry. Now, at this point, remember, this is 1900. This is pre-Russian Revolution. So Fabergé is still very much
The czar's
stuff. And it hasn't been well, I mean, some stuff has been sold to other people, but the fact is that this guy has a ton of Fabergé jewelry. In fact, he claims that this one ring was worn by like the czaress of Russia. Now, he doesn't say who that was, which czaress, but the Empress of Russia, he said. I'm sorry, I underlined that. Do not say czar. And Annette is really taken by that ring. And he's just like, take it. And I'm shocked, obviously. This guy doesn't care at all about some of the most expensive jewelry in Europe.
or the art.
Or the history of that jewelry. I mean, if that was like the Empress of Russia's ring, my God. Like, just take it, whatever. If you like it, it's yours. We then go to see that the display of all the artifacts is being assembled by King, and all the workers that are reassembling the tomb on this stage have absolutely no respect at all for the artifacts.
No, they're putting pieces on their head.
They're playing around with canoptic jars. Just zero respect. And I'm like, okay, these are going to be the guys that are killed first, are they?
No.
Like, again, like in any other movie, you would expect there's going to be consequences to this disrespect. Now, there is consequences to just the fact that the freaking tomb was opened. But even then, Darlene, I question it. And that's why I'm weird on this plot overall. I'll get to the plot later. I mean, we're on the plot right now, but I'll talk about why I think it's just bad in general. So, it turns out that isn't it Adam who translates all the artifacts for Annette while they're there? Like, not the artifacts, the hieroglyphics. He
translates the pendant that she got from her father.
Yes, so it's John that's translating the hieroglyphics.
John is, and this is the next scene. I think the next scene is John is in his study, studying the pendant that Antoinette got. Annette got.
Yes,
from
but
her
that's
husband.
not, I need to tell the story of what those hieroglyphics say, because that's all before this. Because why this pendant matters isn't known yet until I tell this. These hieroglyphics are basically like two small panels there isn't a lot written on it, but it's about 5 minutes worth of story. Okay. It turns out that Ra the Emperor had a twin brother, and they were very different. And the twin brother was like, I don't even know the damn twin brother's name. It's like B or something like I don't know. I don't even think I have it written down. Ra was wise and loved, but he was banished
into the desert.
And where he befriended a tribe in the desert. His brother then sent assassins to kill him before he could make his return, because his brother was just a bad dude, I guess. And it turns out that Ra, the pharaoh, had been praying to Bast. They don't call it Bast. It's like Basset or something like that. It's a different way of saying it, but it's Bast, like the cat god of ancient Egypt. He's praying to Bast, and we, like, in the tale, he just dies. Okay. So now we go to this translation of the amulet, and it turns out that Annette's father had given Annette this amulet on the day he died. Like, I guess it was before he was staked out in the desert, before the beginning of the movie. So she's always had this thing. Now, Adam has been interested in it, and John then translates it. Correct?
I don't know. Because Adam just reads it.
Well, yeah, Adam just reads it, and he's like, "Oh, well, that's not from the same
John
era
was
as."
Studying it in his study when he gets killed.
There was something said about how the amulet isn't from
the
age as the tomb.
That was from Adam.
Which does not make sense at all.
He said it was from the old kingdom, not the new kingdom.
Okay, none of that makes sense. Right? None of it makes sense. To me, it's possible, I guess, that this amulet came from before when Ra was pharaoh, and he's had it for some reason. I guess that is possible, but it's also weird in that what we know about Adam later on. So the sarcophagus is opened, and we see it's like in this weird. They open it twice. They open up the sarcophagus twice. Once, just like with Alexander King there and a couple people to see the mummy in the sarcophagus.
And to do a pre-showing.
Totally different scene, Darlene. Totally different scene where they do this pre-showing where they open it up and the mummy's not there. So, two different scenes. Yeah, I know. See, because the plot has like repeated, well, the movie has repeating scenes. And Darlene has a habit of talking about scenes that are like too ahead of where I'm at right now. It's kind of funny. She's glaring at me, but King is then offered like huge sums of money from the Egyptians again, like even more than before. But he just absolutely refuses. King does a show for the press. That's where he opens up the sarcophagus and the mummy is not there.
With exit signs lit up in the background.
That's the point. Yeah, there's modern 1960s exit signs lit up in the background, which was actually pretty bad for Hammer. Hammer's usually like A game all the time with sets and props. And the props in this movie, top notch. Sets in this movie, top notch, except for the fact there's modern freaking exit signs. So then we have a scene where King leaves. This is after this like failed exhibition for the press. King leaves, and all the way through this movie he's been a dick, but he comes across as a really nice guy because he's offering beggars like lots of change. He's giving them money.
A prostitute tries to pick him up.
A prostitute tries to pick him up, and he says, "No, thank you, ma'am." He walks away, stops, turns around, and gives her money and says, "Go get yourself a hot meal." And then walks away.
And then the mummy kills him.
And then the mummy kills him by throwing him downstairs, breaking his neck, etc. But I'm like, oh man, wait a second. King is actually kind of a nice... He isn't a total douchebag. Like, there was an actual human being underneath all of that. that maybe this kind of showman thing that he had going for him was just an act as well, to like sell these artifacts in a way for exhibition. Anyway, he's killed. Sir Giles is then killed by the mummy breaking into his house.
He shoots him how many times?
He shoots him like 5 times with a Webley. That's fine. Annette sees Adam being attacked by the mummy, but it stops and it walks up the stairs towards her because she's in his house at the time.
Yes, and Adam is reading poetry to Annette at that time.
Yeah, it walks up the stairs, but Adam stands and speaks ancient Egyptian, and the mummy stops. Annette passes out, and the mummy reaches out just to touch her hand. And I was thinking, okay, wait a second. Why would the mummy stop at this point? Because remember, like, what the curse is supposed to be. The curse is supposed to be death and destruction to anyone who was there that opened the tomb, and opened the sarcophagus to look upon the mummy's corpse when the sarcophagus was opened. And Annette was there, right?
So was Adam.
But we understand why Adam isn't in a little bit. But everybody else, it's exactly that way.
Yeah.
But I guess Adam's like, he says something, the mummy stops.
In the native tongue of whatever.
Ancient Egyptian. The mummy then smacks Adam across the head. He passes out. Police show up.
That's how I wrote it.
Okay, how did you write it then, Darlene?
I wrote it, the mummy bitch slaps Adam.
Okay, that's fine. Police and the Egyptian guy that has been trying to negotiate the return of the artifacts to Egypt, along with John Bray. I guess John Bray didn't get. Oh yeah, John Bray isn't stabbed. It's Sir Giles is killed. They arrive and are told that the mummy is attacking people. Later that night, the mummy enters the home of Bray, but the Metropolitan Police are prepared because they assume this curse is a real thing, or it's operating, because obviously there's a freaking mummy.
I thought John was
around.
Killed in his study by a black robe.
No.
Oh.
He's there all the way through the end.
Oh.
The Metropolitan Police are in his home and drop a net on the mummy. Like, they just, like, it's a comical net. And the Egyptian man sees the mummy and then begs to be destroyed. Like, for some reason, the mummy is at, like, everyone's mercy.
Calls him Prince something or other, Prince of the Desert.
Yeah, and he, like, goes onto his knees and begs to be killed, begs to be destroyed, begs for his name to never be remembered and his ancestors to be shamed. Like, it's really... What? I guess the mummy gains power from that and breaks through the net and then curb stomps this guy's head into like mush. And I guess that is so shocking to the police that they let him go.
I have no idea.
So Adam then takes Annette into his basement where he shows her like these multiple Egyptian artifacts that weren't a part of the display.
And one of them's Bass, the one that you see
the Bass
in
statue. And it turns out
in the flashback.
It turns out that Adam is actually the immortal brother of Ra, that he's been cursed with immortal life, and that this amulet has like the words of life on it. And he's been cursed to walk the earth forever unless killed by his brother. He wants to die and wants to have Annette join him in death. And it's not like he thinks there's an afterlife. It comes across that he thinks there's nothing, and that will be sweet release. So why is he wanting to have Annette join him when there's nothing? I don't know. Anyway, he summons the mummy, and the police arrive. They escape into the sewers, and with the mummy carrying Annette. So there's this whole showdown in the sewers. The mummy takes the amulet from Annette and drowns Adam.
And remember, this is a mummy from the desert.
And he's just walking
through
around
water.
in waist deep
And
sewage
it doesn't
water.
even look like a mummy when they show him.
Not, yeah, sort of. It's weird. It's not your typical mummy.
It looks like a person that's been...
it's not your stereotypical movie mummy. Is all I'm saying.
That ain't what I'm saying.
Okay.
It looks... They're wrapped.
Okay.
That cloth that is wrapped in a certain way.
Okay.
This one looks like somebody took a plaster of Paris or that and made the mummy.
Okay.
it wasn't elegantly strips of cloth.
Okay, so the mummy takes the amulet from Annette, like I said, drowns Adam. He then walks away and causes a collapse of the sewers over him to crush him. And there's almost a Terminator 2 thumbs up scene. Like it was so telegraphed, even though that's obviously made way before Terminator 2. Admit it, Darlene. You had that thought going through your head too.
I said the end does not make sense.
No, it doesn't make sense, but the police find Annette in the sewers. The end. So,
and where's the mummy underneath?
It just crushed underneath a whole bunch of sewage rocks, I guess. Like sewer pipe rocks. With his hand going up with a thumbs up. I guess he had like the amulet in his hand or whatever.
And what happened to his brother?
Drowned. Remember, Adam said that the only way he could be killed is by his brother's hand. And Ra the mummy choked him out underwater. He did not rise up out of the water. So Adam's dead. The end. So for a Hammer film, I think the plot is fairly weak. A lot of the stuff just doesn't fit together very well. It feels a little rushed. It feels like they didn't go through enough drafts of the script.
And that everything was edited
so
off kilter.
So what worked? We've already mentioned the props are
Yes.
A-game. The sets in general are A-games. Like, they're very well done, except for the fact that you can see in one scene 1960s exit signs lit up in purple.
They were red.
They were purple. I even wrote down purple exit signs.
I think that was the coloring of the film
Maybe.
to make it dark.
Maybe. I'm just saying they looked purple to me.
There's red or green.
Okay, they were red, but they were purple on the screen. What else worked in this? You have to have something. You always look at me and go, I don't know. What worked? You enjoyed chunks of this movie, Darlene, so...
Yeah, I did some of them.
But what worked, besides the props and the sets? Silence.
Yes! Did you put me on the space?
Costuming. Costuming works very well in this. It's another Hammer film that has great costuming.
When you put me on center stage, I blank out.
Okay. Costuming is always very good in a Hammer film. It was very good in this. I actually thought the acting was actually good for a couple people, but not our leads. Because our leads are supposed to be Terrence Morgan as Adam Beaucamp and Ronald Howard as John Bray. I do not think they did a good job. Who I think are actually the good actors and actresses in this is Fred Clark as Alexander King, because he plays off that whole arrogant douchebag really, really well, and then puts in like that extra layer right before he's killed.
But that's writing.
That's good writing, but he pulled it off really well.
I think the Egyptian person that was trying to get the mummy, except for that last scene,
where he just like kill me.
I actually think he did good in acting.
Yeah, I think that's Hashimi Bey. Like, it's that guy. I'm pointing to. I think it's George Pastel who played Hashimi Bey. I actually thought that Janine Rolland as Annette Dubois did a pretty good job. She was dubbed in this film. Did you know that?
Oh.
So the voice isn't hers, but I think she emoted very well. And that's saying something that I think she did a good job in this, even knowing that that's not her voice. That actress, by the way, appears in other movies. She's actually in You Only Live Twice.
So who was her voice actor?
Oh, I don't know. I couldn't tell you that. Could not tell you that. Anyway, what else? Is there anything else that you think works?
Well, the costume of the mummy did not work to me.
Well, I'm trying to be positive first. We have already stated that there's a few things that don't work in this movie. The plot overall does not really work. It doesn't mesh very well. I think it barely goes into that category of does not work, because I think there's some interesting things in this, plot-wise. Like the whole idea of this other immortal character that's been seeking out his brother to kill him. Okay, that's kind of interesting.
And John Bray was supposed to be Antoinette Dubois'
Annette
fiance. right?
I have no idea.
Because there was something about talking about marriage, and then this Adam comes in, and I'm just
I
like,
have no idea. It wasn't important enough to keep mentioning in the film. If it was mentioned once, it was very briefly, and I didn't catch it. It's possible. You might be right. They might be fiancés, but it doesn't matter to the film at all. I'll say most of the characters.
It kind of does, because she really, like, if that's the case, then she cheats on him in a way.
No, she's not cheating on him, but let's be honest. Adam just gives her a multi-million-pound ring.
That doesn't mean you're
gonna
go
be like
kissing his face all over.
She wasn't doing that.
Yes, she was.
Was it the
when
standard?
he was reading poetry and that?
Okay, I guess I missed that. I don't know. This movie's just confusing me now. I sit here and take notes, folks. I don't know. This movie's very forgettable. Maybe that's the whole point of it. Like, it isn't Hammer Films' best work by any means. Like, every Hammer film that we've watched besides this has been at least good.
The writer and the director, or what is it called? The
writer-director is the same person. It's Michael Carreras.
And then the editor needed to be all fired.
You think?
Yes.
See, the director did a whole bunch of other films. He was also a large producer of films like Hound of the Baskervilles, Man Who Could Cheat Death. The guy was clearly working for Hammer.
Okay, so the editor sucked in this.
Yes, I actually think the editing and the screenplay suffered, but I think this guy actually did a lot of good work otherwise. I just think this is one of Hammer's weakest films that we've seen. Am I going to recommend this, Darlene? What are you going to say?
No.
I'm going to say yes.
Oh.
Even though I didn't like it.
I would say, because I was expecting it at a higher thing, I would say no.
See, I would say, oh, well, I'm on the fence, but I have stopped saying I'm on the fence. I have to like fall one side or the other on our recommendations or not. And to me, if I rated this on a 10, this would be like a 5.2 out of 10. So that means, yeah, I guess if I had to choose between recommending it or not recommending it, I'm going to recommend it.
Okay.
But it's not a very strong recommendation, to say the least. It's not Hammer's greatest film. It's still fine to watch. It's beautiful. It's very well shot.
But I was expecting a lot more.
Yeah, I was expecting a lot more too, because it's Hammer.
And if you're going to watch Hammer and wanted to watch something, this is not what I'd recommend.
No, I agree if you put it in the context of that. But like, otherwise, Anyway, we'll let it go here, folks. So I'm Aaron, and
I'm Darlene. Good evening.
And keep watching the skies.
At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought.
Thanks for listening to this episode of This Week in Geek. Hungry for more? Check out our website at thisweekingeek.net. You can subscribe to the podcast, browse our Twitter and Instagram, and leave your thoughts on today's topics. If you'd like to give us some feedback, send us an email at feedback@thisweekingeek.net. Tune in next time, and remember,
lower your shields and surrender your listenership.
We would be honored if you would join us.
Thank you for your cooperation. Good night.